I'm Jane Applegath. This is the Epic Vision Zone, where bold ideas meet extraordinary leaders. What if the greatest gift you could give your child wasn't security, but courage to build their own path and create their own success? As children, we're often taught to fit into the world. But what if, when we stop asking, what do you want to do when you grow up, we start with asking, what brings you alive? What problem would you like to solve? Today's guest believes entrepreneurial thinking isn't about starting companies, it's about raising human beings who are curious, resilient, creative, fearless, and deeply connected to purpose. Margot Bisnow is a best-selling author, speaker, a former political powerhouse, and mother to two thriving entrepreneurs who spent decades studying what separates extraordinary creators from everyone else. Interviewing 60 notable entrepreneurs, from founders such as YouTube, Tom Shoes, WordPress, Charity Water, and Blue Man Group, to artists, filmmakers, and much more, asking this one question: what did their parents do differently? The answer became the foundation of her acclaimed book, Raising an Entrepreneur, revealing revealing how we can encourage our children and have 10 powerful steps to simply looking at opportunities and creating them. After 20 years serving at the highest levels of government, launching international nonprofit initiatives, and watching entrepreneurship within her own family, Margot is now one of the leading voices helping parents prepare children for lives filled with purpose, resilience, innovation, and joy. Because the greatest legacy we can leave isn't wealth, it's raising someone courageous enough to create value for the world. Welcome, Margot, to the Epic Vision Zone.
Thanks, Jane. That's like the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me.
Oh, well, it's all you, and you're very welcome. Oh my gosh, I have to share with the audience. We've had fun just before Margot got on here. We've been playing with cameras and swapping stories, and we're just having a great old time. And I said, okay, we better get started. But that leads me, because I was just talking about how she got into this, because Margot, I have to say, is a very accomplished woman. You may not know that. The bio was just very brief, but now she's into raising an entrepreneur, which I said the timing couldn't be better for this. Entrepreneurship is soaring. And I would love to know what inspired you to go to do the work that you do today, Margot.
Thanks, Jane. I'm excited to talk about this. So, my older son, Elliot, in 2008, started an organization called Summit, or Summit Series, which was conferences of young entrepreneurs. And I had never met anybody like these people before. These are people in their 20s and 30s who had taken on so much risk and were working around the clock, to try to implement their idea. And I'd go to these events and I was so curious, and I would go up to them and I'd say, how did you turn out like this? And they basically all told me the same thing. They said, I had someone who believed in me and someone who told me I could do anything I put my mind to. Usually that was a family member. Most usually it was their mom, but not always. Sometimes it was a different family member. Sometimes it was even somebody outside the family. But it was always somebody who told them that they could do whatever they put their mind to. And I was so struck by this. And I just kept talking about it to the kids. And they said, you have to write a book. And I said, I can't write a book. And they said, no, you have to write a book. I said, I can't write a book. And they said, you have to write a book. I said, okay, I'll write a book. And I have to say, I started out kind of ambivalent about what I was going to find. But I thought, okay, I'm really going to try to figure this out. And I wanted a very diverse group. So half men, half women, every race, every religion, every socioeconomic background, small families, big families, blended families, divorced families, single moms, parents born overseas, parents here, parents who hadn't finished high school, parents who were doctors and lawyers. I mean, just small towns, big cities, just everything I could think of. And people going into for-profit, nonprofit, artists, activists, everything. And they were all raised the same. And it just like blew me away. And I got so excited about this. And I just thought I have to shout this to the world because it's just amazing. None of them knew each other. And yet they all followed the same basic pattern, raising their kids.
Right. Mm. How wonderful to experience that firsthand with that summit that your son, put together. The energy and the enthusiasm that must have been in that room, just is contagious. And I love that your curiosity had you digging more, and that your boys told you you have to write a book. So here we are. Oh my goodness. So therein lies the child teaching the parent, which is great too.
I
Well,
know
that
they wrote the foreword and they said everyone needs someone to believe in them, and sometimes that's even your kids.
Oh,
Oh,
wow. That's fantastic. I love it. Well, let's delve into then some of these very important rules or points that you have spread out over the course of your book, and now you have a second edition. You said support with passion. Why is it important for a team to have a passion outside of school? And if that passion is viewed as impractical, say by your parents, how does a parent balance encouragement with realism?
um, so first of all, every entrepreneur I've ever spoken to had a passion outside of school. And in every case, the parents supported that passion. Sometimes they didn't support it right away. Sometimes it took a really big gulp. But eventually, these parents, when they saw how much joy it was giving their kids, they supported it. The artists are still basically doing the same thing as their passion. The painters, the actors, the singers, the dancers, but almost everyone else is not doing the same thing. Something like over 30% of them, it was sports. Only one person I've ever talked to became a professional athlete, and that was just for a few years. So the point is, it doesn't matter what the passion is. What matters is that it's something the kids found themselves, that they loved, that they worked hard at, that because they started working hard at it, they started to get good at it. And because they got good at it, they became confident in their ability to master something that they were working hard at. They learned, how to pivot when they were making mistakes. They learned that failure is how you learn and grow. They became resilient. They learned the trade-off between hard work and results. I mean, all the things that they need to be successful in life. And their parents, at some, maybe not right in the beginning, maybe in the beginning they were saying, stop, you know, cooking or sewing or dancing or playing tennis or playing football or whatever it is, and go study your trigonometry. But eventually, the parents were like, wow, this is something you're so good at, you love so much, you're getting so much joy from, and we're really proud of you for your success in that.
Right. So it's a balance, but not stopping them from what they enjoy doing, because that's unfortunately where a lot of children get stopped, and then they get stuck because they feel
Right,
that's the conformity starts to set in. And let's face it, we have enough conformity in the world. Everything is conformity. Schools, you have to conform to the rules. And then if you get a corporate job, it's the corporation. And then, you get a family, and it just goes on and on. But it's getting out of that conformity and saying it's okay to want something different. Yeah,
right.
that's
Right. it's okay to be different. And I
Right.
mean, we're all different, right, Jane? Every one of
Yes.
us is different. And I think that I believe every child is born with a gift. And I believe
Mm.
the most important thing for us to do as a parent is help them figure that out and then to support it and to nurture it. And, you know, some of these kids were great students, some of them weren't. Well, I guess we'll talk about that later, but they all found something they were good at and something they loved and something that they were working hard at and something their parents were proud of them for, that they were doing so well in. And it made them feel really good about themselves, that they knew that if they tackled something, they could accomplish it.
Right. Exactly. That's the key right there. That when you work hard and you practice, you can accomplish anything in your life.
Right,
It's the I
right,
can instead of the I can't, right? Well,
right.
that being said, Margot, childhood interest, what are some surprising childhood interests that later turned into major entrepreneurial careers? Is there one or two you'd like to share?
Yeah, so again, it was the artists, the actors, the singers, they found that in their early teens, and they're still doing that today.
Mm.
Everybody else is not. They're doing something different. I mean, so I can tell you in my own family, I have one son who at 13 discovered writing music. He wrote 300 songs before he graduated from high school. I mean, the music was pouring out of him. And I used to say I felt sorry for parents who didn't get a new song in their inbox every week. Um, but and he's a musician and he has a band and you know that's his life. My other son, it was tennis. He discovered tennis at about 13 and was, you know, obsessed and playing tennis 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, and started very late. Most kids who end up being good tennis players, you know, but at 13, they're playing regional tournaments, and we don't play tennis. We don't write music either. Um, and he would lose and he'd say, I know what I did wrong. I'll beat them next time. And he fought his way up to
Mm.
35 in the country. And
Wow.
he's never done anything professional with tennis.
Mm.
But he says everything I am today is because of tennis. He said, I didn't really like
Mm.
school. I didn't work that hard at school. Tennis is where I learned grit and focus and resilience and hard work and determination and everything that's made me successful. So, I mean, those are like two completely different examples. One where their childhood passion is what they do today, and the other is what their childhood passion has nothing to do with what they do today. And I mean, I can
Right.
give you lots of examples. I mean, I can, you know, so the point is, it doesn't matter if they're doing that, their passion, what their passion is.
Mhm.
It's just, it has to be something they find, that they choose, that they love, that they're working hard at.
Mm. Absolutely. Well, that actually is a perfect segue into this question because this is when you said that your one son had the tennis and it taught him everything that he applies today in his life. Why is failure such a strong teacher for entrepreneurs rather than success? And when a child does fail, how can a parent react to help build that grit instead of shame?
So thank you for asking me this, Jane, because I think that's possibly the most important thing and possibly the biggest difference between parents who raise entrepreneurial kids and parents who don't is the attitude toward failure. So I think there's two really terrible things that parents can do regarding failure. One is they can scold their kids or tell them how disappointed they are or make the kids feel even worse about it. Like, wow, if you'd hit that home run, your team would have won the game, you know. Wow, everyone must feel really bad that you screwed up like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
what's even worse, in my opinion, is the parents who pretend it didn't happen. Oh, it wasn't your fault. Oh, they were cheating. Oh, it doesn't, it doesn't count because they were, they were being dishonest in the way they counted it. I mean, either way, the parents are saying failure is bad. And
Mhm.
parents who raise entrepreneurial kids are saying, as you said, Jane, failure is good. Failure is how you learn and grow. Failure is how you get stronger. Failure is how you get resilient. And so these parents, when their kids screwed up, they'd say, what did you learn from this? What would you do differently next
Mm.
time?
Those are words of gold. Yes. What did you learn from this? Absolutely. Get them thinking in a different way. It's not about your failure. What did you learn? Because they'll carry that throughout life every time they come up against a challenge or an obstacle. And it will keep them going and moving forward as opposed to either staying stuck or going backwards. Yes, I love that. That is,
Roger,
thank you for
yeah,
sharing.
Roger Federer gave the commencement address at Dartmouth a year ago. It's fabulous. It's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it's worth it. And he said, and he's like the best tennis player in my lifetime. And he said, even though I won 80% of my matches, I lost 50% of the points I played. He said, if you're always focused on what you did wrong, you're never going to be successful.
Oh, yeah, I
Just
agree. Uh-huh.
think about it and move on.
Yes, you have to move on. Otherwise, they are stuck. That's where you'll
Right.
stay. Exactly. Well, we touched briefly, Margot, on this at the beginning. You say that parents should stop worrying about straight A's. So, why do straight A's sometimes work against entrepreneurial development?
So I don't know if they work against, I think, look, some of these entrepreneurs I've talked to were straight A students. They went on, they got into Ivy League schools, they got advanced degrees. That's terrific. Some of them weren't. They did just as well. And I think, again, like we were saying, Jane, you have to look at your child. Maybe your
Mm.
child wants to be a doctor and they love science and they just want to study their science classes all the time and they want to go to medical school. That's fabulous. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but maybe you have a very different child. And maybe they're just not as good at school, but maybe they're good at something else. And
Mhm.
that's okay also. I had just given a talk on this at a summit event. There were a couple hundred people there, and a guy came up to me afterwards. He said, can I talk to you? I'm so upset. He said, I think my son is ruining his life. I haven't talked to him in 3 weeks. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, he went off to college and he started this little company in his dorm room. I think it's the stupidest company I've ever heard of. And he's just announced that he's dropping out of college and he's moving home and he wants to work on this little company. And I think his life is I'm just so upset. And I called over this guy who I knew had made a gazillion dollars and hadn't graduated from college. And I said, Craig, let me ask you a question. You have a choice of hiring two different guys. One stayed in school, wasn't a great student, wasn't particularly inspired by any subject, but you know, somehow graduated. The other
Mhm.
kid dropped out of school to start his little company, moved home with his parents, worked on it for a couple of years, then decided this really wasn't the right product, and he wanted to go into a thriving company and see how bigger companies work. Which one do you want to hire? And Craig, without blinking, said, oh, I want to hire the second one, and so do the other 200 entrepreneurs in this room. And the dad was just like, oh, wow, thank you. Like, he wasn't trying to be mean.
Mm.
He just didn't realize the world had changed.
Changed.
He thought that the
Mhm.
world that existed when he grew up was the world that existed today, and it isn't.
Mhm.
And so when he grew up, you had to get into a good college and you had to graduate from college or you couldn't get a job. It's just,
Yep.
and yeah, if you want to go to Wall Street, yeah, you have to go to a good college and get an MBA from a good school. but not if you want to be an entrepreneur or not if you want to go work for a startup. They don't care.
No. Yeah. That's an incredible point. You know, a lot of parents don't realize the world has changed and the degrees don't matter like they used to. In fact, there has been quite a bit of published articles on that very point, that is it worth it to spend your money on a degree, because is it really going to get you that Ivy League? Now, yes, of course, if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or like a finance manager, there's certain professions. But as you just said, those that are starting these entrepreneurial companies, and there's so many of them and they're hugely successful, they don't want the person who lives and thinks in a box. They want the creators. They want
Right.
the ones that will excel at new ideas and growth. So what a great point. I love that. Well, here is the thing. What do you advise then? This is something, if parents came to you with peer pressure from schools or relatives to prioritize grades above everything else, what advice would you tell them? Maybe it's just that the world has changed.
I would say, like, you do what you want for your kids and I'll do what I want with mine. I mean, let's check back with each other in 20 years and see how we both did. I mean, it's like, I mean, as you said, it depends what they want to be when they grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And you need an education for some things and you don't for others. And even if you don't have an idea for your own company thing you want to start, if you want to go work for a startup, like you're saying, Jane, they just want someone who thinks outside the box, who's creative and interesting and, good
Mm-hmm.
with people and comes up with great ideas and is curious and looks at things in different ways. And they don't need, the person who's always been good at telling the teacher what the teacher wants to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's face
Yeah.
it, teachers, and even the entrepreneurs who were good students, a lot of them, that the teachers didn't like them
Mm.
because these are not kids who sit quietly and just give the teachers what they want to hear. They challenge the teachers. They talk back. They say, maybe you should do it differently. And a lot of teachers
Mm.
don't want to hear that.
No, absolutely not. And a lot of times they fail at school not because they don't have the ability to learn, but because they're bored.
Right.
Nobody ever thinks of that. A lot of times they're bored, so they don't pay any attention. And those are the ones, like you said, that they're not paying attention in class and they're disruptive, and not always, but a lot of times they're that way because they're bored. They're just like, well, this is really not interesting to me. Well, you have here that mentors can be great. So what makes a mentor transformative rather than just helpful?
I think especially if a kid isn't doing well in school,
Mm,
especially if the kid isn't liked by his or her teachers,
mm,
especially if the kid is maybe, being bullied or isn't fitting in.
mm,
If they find someone who believes in them and who is excelling in the thing that they love, it can mean more to them than anything else. One of the favorite people in my book, Benny Blanco, who is adorable. He's written something like 25 hit songs. I think he started his own podcast. Now he just had Ed Sheeran on, and they wrote a song together. And he's really remarkable. And his mom told me that she would get a call every week from when he was in kindergarten complaining that he wouldn't sit in the circle. And, and he says, like, all his teachers found him super annoying. And then his mom found him a music teacher outside of school who said he was the most talented kid he'd ever worked with. And that meant more to Benny than the fact that all his teachers thought he was annoying. He ended up dropping out of college, and I think he's still, he's gotten the Songwriters Hall of Fame
Mm.
award like 5 times, I mean, it's just like, he's unbelievable. He always said, my teachers always found me so annoying, I knew I'd go, end up doing something, good eventually.
Wow. Therein lies the confidence, which is exactly, what though the young people are looking for, especially when you're that young. All you need is that one mentor to mention, because you say that belief from a parent, or let's say a mentor, can shape a child's entire trajectory. So why is then parental confidence so powerful psychologically?
Well, because if the person, I mean, one of the people I interviewed, John Arrow, said, you know, it occurred to him that if the people closest to you don't think you're great, if the people closest to you aren't proud of you, I mean, it can be very dispiriting.
Mm.
If the people who know you the best don't believe in you. And, he gave me so many examples of like, where he would do something and of like, they wrote a newspaper and for school and like put who liked who and all this kind of stuff, who liked whom, and all, and the principal was furious. And he said so many of his, friends' parents were furious. And he said his parents just thought it was hysterical. They just, but I mean, he said to me, like, if you're the people closest to you aren't impressed with what you're doing, then how depressing is that?
Yeah. And especially when you're living with them, as if it's their parents, that's not good. And
No,
it rubs off. It's energy. I mean, we all have a sense of when we walk into a room, you either, there's excitement and people feel upbeat, or people are angry or worried, or like you said, dispirited. It's the same. It's very much the same. So how do you build confidence then without creating entitlement? Is there a fine line?
well, you're entitled when you get something you haven't worked for,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And you're confident when you've accomplished something you've worked hard at.
Right.
So I actually think they're completely different. And I think it's entitled kids who just get stuff their whole life and are told they're wonderful no matter what they do,
Mm.
and are protected, and when they fail are told it wasn't their fault. These are kids who really struggle when they grow up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They don't understand why the world isn't giving them more stuff for free, or for
Right,
just because of who they are. And it's a
right,
real reality. It's a reality check that is
right,
not a good one, for sure.
right. Right, these are the
Yeah.
kids who need the safe space, at school, or who get triggered
Mm.
if they hear something that's not, what they're used to hearing. Geez.
Yeah, yeah, it's a program. I mean, we all get certain things that we pick up when we're children, and your limiting beliefs, your courage, your confidence or lack of it. And yeah, that's absolutely, you're right. Those children have not been exposed to failure, like you said, or obstacles, or even challenges, because those things don't exist in their cocoon. And you can't live this life in a cocoon, let's face it. And this
No,
life is changing very rapidly, even more so than when you and I grew up, for sure. Yeah,
right,
there were things that were, pretty steady, and you knew if you had a job, you had it for the rest of your life, and you'd get a pension. And oh gosh, that doesn't exist anymore. you
doesn't
know?
exist anymore.
No.
No, yeah, I feel sorry for kids who always did everything they were told,
Mm,
and like you're saying, they thought, oh, if I follow this path, like my parents say, that my life will be secure. And
Right. Well, that's exactly where we're going because you have a rule in your first book that says embrace adversity. So
yes,
entrepreneurs often face serious hardships, loss, and poverty, even and discrimination. So why does
yes,
adversity often produce resilience over defeat?
yes. No, I think that's a great question. And it's actually something that really surprised me was how many entrepreneurs did experience enormous adversity with
Mm,
parents getting divorced, parents losing their job, parents um, getting very sick. Something like a number of them had a parent who died, which
mm,
like
yeah.
most kids at 30 don't know anybody who have had a parent who died. Um, and, all of these parents basically said to their kids, like, things can be good and things can be bad, and it just depends how you react. Life is never going to be easy, life is never going to be perfect. And failure is not having something bad happen to you. Failure is not picking yourself back up, not trying again, not going on. One of my favorite stories is Brian Meehan, who is CEO of Blue Bottle Coffee. He's
Mm,
Irish, and
yeah.
his dad was an entrepreneur, and there was a big recession, and his dad lost his company, and uh, he, he didn't know anything about this, and then a letter came to the house saying that they were in arrears in their school tuition, and he didn't
Mm,
know what the word arrears meant. He had to look it up, and that was the first time he had heard. And his dad said, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to the school and tell them we're gonna have to withdraw you guys. I can't, we can't do the school fees anymore. And the headmaster said, you're not taking these kids out of this school. We'll cover the school fees. And Brian said
mm,
that when he sold his first company, the first thing he did was give a huge grant to the school to have some scholarships in the headmaster's name.
mm. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, to be a story.
Yeah. Kindness comes back, paying it forward. It's really amazing, these stories that people can pay it forward or just help someone and it's something that comes back full circle. Well, stepping back, so then what would you say when you let them struggle? Say, for example, you do have a child that's an entrepreneur or they're dabbling in that. Where do you step back or where do you put in, obviously the encouragement, but when do you step back and let them figure it out for themselves?
Always.
Okay.
Um, so first of all, most of these people were not entrepreneurs in high school. Um, and I always tell people, you can't make your child an entrepreneur.
Mm, no.
You, you can make them curious, you can make them resilient. Um, you can make them have all the personality traits that will enable them to become entrepreneurial. But almost everyone I talked to, they were like the only one in their family who did become an entrepreneur. Um, One of the reasons I did a second edition of the book is they almost all of them were doing something different, 7 years later. Either they sold their company or they'd left their company or they'd, pivoted their company or something. I mean,
Right.
it's just, life is just a series of opportunities. And as you said, like, it's not like anyone gets a job at IBM that they keep until they're 60 and then retire with a pension. Like, it's like, no. So, what's just important is for people to know that, hey, this is tough and, this is going to be difficult for you and you're going to get through it. And we're here for you. I mean, they all told
Mm,
me things like John Chu, the movie director, told me he did Wicked. And he said, I always knew I could go home if I failed. and that gave me the courage to take risks. He never did have to go home, but he said I had the courage to take risks. Um, and because I knew if I failed, I could go home again.
Oh,
Um,
right.
some of these people, some of these, like, they were miserable in school. Some of them were in a small private school and were miserable. Their parents pulled them out and put them in a big public school. Some of them were in a big public school and they were miserable and their parents pulled them out and put them in a small private school. Some of them did homeschooling for a while. Some of them sent them to a relative in another state and let them try a school over there for a while. I mean, these kids struggled in different ways, and the parents, said, like, I mean, they didn't just say, well, you're going to be miserable and that's it. They said, is there something we can do about it? And how do you think we should
Mm.
fix it? And what should we do differently? And they worked with them, but they didn't fix it for them, really. I mean, they didn't go into the principal and say, you have to do this and this for my kid.
Right. Yes, it's so important to let them figure it out for themselves. Like when you fall, when you're learning to walk, you have to get back up and just learn that balance and teach yourself. But knowing that that compassion or that net is there, like you said, like the director or the producer of Wicked, he said, I knew I could always go back if I failed. Just having that security is enough, even though, like you said, he never had to go back. But those are, yes, very vital lessons. And like you said, in one of your rules is nurturing compassion. So, how does that compassion play into entrepreneurship's social impact and long term fulfillment then?
So what surprised me is that every one of these entrepreneurs that I have spoken to, the ones in the book and others, they all felt that they were here for a reason, and that they're here to make the world a better place, and that they're here not just for themselves. People who want to make money go to Wall Street.
Mm,
It's a different group of people. These people are want to make the world a better place, want to have an impact, and maybe that's what the company. The guy who started Method Products wanted to make better cleaning materials that were, didn't have disgusting chemicals and didn't smell so bad and weren't in such ugly bottles. I mean, he's making the world a better place by producing, better things for us to clean with. So it's not just people who, like Charity Water, who's delivering clean water to people around the world, which is extraordinary. And the number of villages where he's improved thousands and thousands of people's lives, you know, that's, I mean, that's an incredible nonprofit. But
mm,
the for-profits, they're trying to make a better product or service. And I mean, like Tom's Shoes, Blake Mycoskie started Tom's because he saw these barefoot kids and thought, gee, at first, he thought maybe I should, start a nonprofit and I can raise money and try to buy shoes. And then he came up with this idea. And I believe he was the first person who ever did it, this one for one model where you,
mhm.
you buy a pair of shoes and you give a pair of shoes to a child in need. I get Warby Parker glasses. Every time I buy a pair of glasses, they give sight to someone, not necessarily a pair of glasses, but maybe an eye exam or something. So, I mean, I just think I buy Bombas socks, and I get a pair of socks and a pair of socks goes to someone in need. And so, I mean, this is because they're raised compassionately to say, like, what can I do for other people? What can I do
Right.
to make the world a better place?
Right. Yes. It's again one of those values that are instilled in an individual, and it's interesting because you said Wall Street. Well, they're not creators. They're
Right,
just money um, builders. They're not
right.
creating anything. They're managing money is basically what they're doing. Whereas entrepreneurs who start a business, they're creators, whether it's a service business, whether it's a product, whether it's a bakery, it doesn't matter. Or like you said, your one son is a musician and the other one has this incredible um, conference summit that he does. They're creating their they're, like I said at the beginning, they're giving back to the world. And so that's the key right there. And that compassion that comes with sharing those with whomever, whether it's your customer or, like you said, Tom's shoes. Yes, that was genius. And he started out with a big heart, wanting to help those children with no shoes. But it ended up being the biggest marketing campaign that he could have ever thought of. So, it came back a hundredfold, because people would buy the shoes specifically because they knew they were
The
helping
story.
an individual. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so it really does make a difference. The values that are instilled in you, and that they keep you through the work that you do in the world. So that's being in a great family. So what specific family habits showed up repeatedly in your research when you did interview all these individuals? Was there any specific habits that showed up consistently?
So it's so funny that you asked, because before I started writing the book, that my kids said, write down, Mom, what you think the rules are going to be, and I wrote them down.
Mm.
Of course, mine were nothing like anybody else's. But one of my rules was you always have to eat dinner together. And someone said, like, what time do you eat dinner? And I said, when the last person walks in the door. And it's just something we did. Uh, Almost nobody else. Um, so, when I say you have to be a great family, there's not one way to be a great family. There's a million ways to be a great family. All of these entrepreneurs had incredibly different families, as
Mm.
I said before, from single moms to blended families to 7 kids to only kids and all of the families were different, and some of the moms were full-time moms, and some of the moms worked, and some of the moms worked around the clock. And
Mm.
some of the families moved a lot, some of the families never moved. I mean, it's just super different.
Right.
What they all had in common was that all the kids knew how much their families loved them and how much they
Mhm.
loved each other, and that they were always there for them, and
Mhm.
that they were always there when they were needed. And the kids whose moms worked around the clock said, like, my mom was like always working, but I knew, like, if I ever needed her, she was there for me.
Right.
And so these were families with a lot of love.
Right. Love and security. It's always
Right,
that
love.
coming back, yeah, to knowing that there was always someone there to catch you if you fell.
Right, right.
Yeah. And that, just having that sense, gives you the courage to step out and try different things, because no matter what happens, they say, "Don't worry, I'll be here for you." And that gives
Exactly.
you the Go ahead.
Right. No, exactly, because if you're afraid to fail
Yeah.
because you're afraid you'll be abandoned, or you're afraid you'll be scolded, or you're afraid you'll be punished, or you're afraid you'll be looked down, or whatever. If you're afraid to fail, you're afraid to take risks. And if you're afraid to take risks, you're not going to be creative, and you're not going to start something. You're just not going to be an entrepreneur,
Right.
or you're not
Yes.
gonna be entrepreneurial. You can be, to me, like, you can be entrepreneurial. You can start something in another company, in a big company. I mean, one of the people in here worked for the UN Foundation. She started a program called Nothing But Nets that was putting, malaria nets around, in Africa. I mean, to me, that's very entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Artists are entrepreneurial. To become an actor, you have to build a whole team around you. Having a podcast is entrepreneurial. These are self-starters. These are people who've created, who are
Yes.
doing something.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And that's the thing today, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that the entrepreneurs are really soaring these days. They say that entrepreneurship is higher than it's ever been in the history of the US. And one of, they say, is the advent of AI, making it easier for people to start up. But also, I just think it's the way the world is going. There's no question that, people have a lot more creativity, and it may be because AI assists them. They might play with it and give them ideas, et cetera, et cetera. But whatever the case might be, we are having a huge shift in the way business is done and also in the entrepreneurial field. So, and it's right across the board in every industry. And many of your entrepreneurs, you said, have had a sense of purpose beyond money. So where does that bigger vision usually come from? Do you think that they get exposed to that type of pay it forward or giving back from family, or do you think it's society or a combination?
I mean, I think it has to come from your family. And I mean,
Mm,
so many of these people were raised, I think, better than I did, in terms of like, we're always going to, volunteer at the local food bank, or you have a job, but you have to give 10% to a charity, or, you're here for somebody else, we have to help other people, or, I mean, this one guy, Adam Braun, they ended up adopting some kids from Africa had come for the summer and didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, some come on for athletic program, and the family just took them in. They said, "Yeah, we got room in our house, sure." You know, I mean, so it's not that the parents were
mm,
saying,
right.
it's what the parents were doing and how the parents were living their lives and how the parents were contributing and how the parents were supporting, you know, people that needed help or charities or whatever, or volunteering their time. And
Yeah, it's funny because your rule number 10 in your first book was lead by following, or what I would say, lead by example. So how can parents support without steering or controlling outcomes? Well, just like you said, children are always aware of what their parents are doing, whether you think it or not.
exactly. But also just
Yeah.
to see what gives your child joy, and then to support it and to be there for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have to be aware of what that is. So stepping back, looking back, what is an example um, where there was the most powerful thing a parent did? Is there a particular story or an example that resonated with you, that was one of the most powerful things a parent did to encourage?
There's so many. Yeah, there's so many. I mean, one of my favorites, I mentioned John Chu, the director of Wicked, and he fell in love with making movies when he was in fourth grade. And he was just always, making movies and, you know, doing it all through junior high and trying to,
Mm,
film for money or doing this and this. And, I think he was like in ninth grade, and his mom came into his room at night, and he was supposed to be sleeping, and he was making a movie on his laptop. And his mom said, "Go to bed and stop wasting your time with this nonsense. You need to be prepared for school tomorrow." His parents were both immigrants. They have a
mm,
restaurant in Palo Alto called Chef Chu's, and they, wanted their kids to be like serious professionals.
sure.
And she said, "Just stop wasting your time with this nonsense." And he burst into tears. He said, "You can't make me stop. It's what I love. It's what I want to do for my whole life." And she said, "Go to sleep. We'll talk about it tomorrow." And she picked him up at school the next day, and she'd been to the library. She had 10 filmmaking books. She said, "If you want to do it, be the best."
Oh, wow. That's
And,
amazing.
and he said from then on, they were like the most supportive parents in the world. And
Wow.
he said, so he went to USC Film School, and at the end, they, had us showed their small film, and people came in to see it, and it changed his life because it got him an agent and, a contract. And his mom called him, and so that's in LA, and his parents were in Palo Alto. And his mom called him like a week before and said, "What are you serving at this, when you have this film?" And
Oh,
he said, "Serving?" you know? And so he said his mom and his sister and his aunt, like everybody, piled the car up with, plates and plastic glasses and food and drove down to LA and served like food to everybody who came for his little film
Oh,
presentation.
that's
So sweet.
wonderful. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But how wonderful for that mom to not just shrug that incident off and just think, oh, it was a temper tantrum, or that's just kids growing up, they go through their little tiffs or whatever. She went to the library and got all those books. And if you're going to do it, be the best. That is such a powerful lesson. Wow.
I
That,
know. I
and
love it.
see, he never forgot it. He never forgot it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You must have so many wonderful stories in those books. Well, but believing in your child, and after interviewing 70 families, at least for the first one, if there's only one mindset parents should adopt, what would you say it would be?
I would say it's really important for parents to pay attention to the
Mm.
signals their kids are giving them. I'll talk to parents of high school kids and I'll say, what's your child's passion? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. And
Mm.
you're just not paying attention because they're giving off signals. And, and every time they give off a signal, you're saying, stop wasting time on that nonsense and go back and study.
Mm.
Instead of saying, let's see if, let's work on this a little more. Like, let's keep up the cooking or the sewing or the stitching or the building or the singing or the dancing or the acting or the playing chess or the playing ping pong or the swimming. I mean, I don't know whatever it is, like, why don't you do that a little more? And maybe we can, get you a lesson or introduce you to some people that are doing that, or, let's see how that goes in addition to everything else. And instead of just forcing them to spend all their time studying and doing all these extracurricular activities the parents think will help them get into the right school. Pay attention, look at your child.
Mm.
Every child is born with a gift. Every child is different. My 5-year-old grandson in his kindergarten class, they'd all written on the teacher asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up, and they had to like draw a picture of it. And this one wanted to be a farmer. This one wanted to be a doctor. This one wanted to be an astronaut. This one wanted to be a teacher. This one wanted to be a swimmer. I don't know, whatever they, they're all different. Maybe none of them is going to end up being those things. But the point is, they all had different things that excited them.
Mhm.
You just have to look.
Yeah. And be inquisitive. Be inquisitive. Curiosity. It's like, well, why do you like that? Tell me what excites you about that. You know, just get into their world and just, why it's interesting you said a swimmer. I'd be very curious. Oh, that's interesting. Why do you like the swimmer? I mean, yeah, it's fascinating. You need to go in those schools, Margot, and start getting those teachers and parents curious about their kids, because
But I
this
can't believe
starts at a
we've talked for an hour, and we've finally brought up the word curiosity, which is the other thing that's the most important thing for parents to do, is to raise curious children. And I think entrepreneurs are curious people. They're people who say, does it have to be this way? Could I do it
right.
differently? Could I make it better? Could I change something? Could I add something? Could I take something away? Could I modify something? That's how companies get started. If you don't raise your children to be curious, they're never going to ask those questions.
Yeah, it's the why. You get those little kids that go, why? What I mean? But that's curiosity. I mean, sometimes they do it because they know they're bugging you. But yeah, I mean, I was always, and I still do it. In fact, I drive my husband nuts. I don't care. It doesn't matter anymore. So I'll be like, why? But why did that happen? But
Right.
yes, curiosity is the key to innovation. Without
Yes,
curiosity, there is no innovation. That's the
yes,
key. It's curiosity. We have to have, and we all are born with curiosity. I mean, if you take a child, an infant, to a garden or just put them on the grass, they'll look at a blade of grass and be in awe. They're just like, wow, what is this? Or they'll look at a flower. You just see the excitement and the awe in their face because it's something new. It's a discovery. And you just want to keep that spark alive. That's the spark we
right.
want to light.
100%. And so many of these entrepreneurs, they started their company because they asked questions and they thought about it and
Mm.
they were curious. One of my favorite examples is Joel Holland. And he'd sold his first company. He got an RV. He was traveling around the country. And he was just, there's so many places that look like they'd be really interesting to stay, but the only places for us to stay are these horrible RV parks. Isn't there
Mm.
another way? And then he found out there was this little organization that someone had just started called Harvest Hosts. And he talked them into selling it to him. And now it's like 1,000 times bigger. And it's something like you pay, I don't know, $80 a year, and you have thousands of places you can stay around the country for free. All the wineries, all the farms, all the breweries, just all these fabulous places. And of course, the farmers are delighted to have these people come and stay with them because, they'll usually buy stuff and it makes it so much more interesting for the people, and he started Harvest Hosts because he was curious, like, why do I have to stay in these horrible RV parks?
Right.
If he hadn't been brought up to question things, he would never have
Right.
done it.
Yeah. And it's so simple. I mean, how wonderful is that? Often these ideas are simple, but nobody's thought of it. And except for those individuals, like you said, who ask the question, why? It doesn't always have to be complex. I mean, that's another thing that I think we believe that if it's not a complex idea or something, that's really got a lot of things going on with it, that it's not going to work. But like you said, it could be
But
something this simple.
right, or like I said, Eric Ryan in Method Products, he's like, why every time you want to get something to clean your furniture, it has to stink and be in a
It's
big
true.
ugly bottle? Like, why does it have to be so gross? And
Yeah.
he's not a
Yeah.
chemist. He hired a chemist. He said, let's make cleaning products that smell good and that aren't full of disgusting chemicals.
Yep.
It's just because
It's
he
like all of them.
gas. Right.
Yeah. Well, I know, Margot, that you have a second edition of your book. Is there anything that you would like to share in reference to this second edition? Because obviously, this is something that's very exciting to you, and I think the world. I love this topic. I think every parent needs to hear and read this book. So, give us some insight into this second edition, and when did it come out?
Yeah, it came out a couple years ago. Okay, so the one of the main differences between this one and the first one, aside from the fact that everybody was doing something different, is that I had gotten photos from everybody
Mm,
of when they were young and today, and the publisher of my first edition decided not to include them, I think, because they're too expensive. And I really, really wanted to keep them in. So like, here's John Chu, the famous movie director,
wonderful.
with his mom in the one
Oh,
picture, and then when he was a little. So I just think it's so cool to look at these people who are like big deals today and go like, oh, they were just a dorky little kid. They weren't so famous, but you know what I mean? They were just, look, here's Michael Saylor from Strategy, the big, Bitcoin guy. I mean,
oh, right.
you know, no, it's just so
Yeah.
funny. Like, I mean, all of these, I just think it's so fun to look at all these pictures of the people when they were young and today, and just realize that they were just ordinary kids, just like I am.
Yeah. Well, that's a great lesson in itself because you often see these entrepreneurs who have these multi-million dollar, billion dollar companies, and you always think, oh, wow, I could never be like them. But then you see that picture and you go, they're just like I am or was, they were kids growing up, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives you that picture, that insight. And what I also love, Margot, is that there's stories and we resonate with stories. It actually is a cognitive thing that we actually resonate with stories more than anything. And so the fact that your book are all stories of these individuals who have, started as children and either found their niche or grew into it is fantastic. It's a lesson that every young person needs to know and any age, I think, because you're never
Right.
too old to be young. That's what I say.
So it is, it's a collection of mostly 2 to 4 page stories. And so
Yeah.
it's super easy to read. It's very approachable. It's not something you have to slog through that's got a 50 page, chapter or something. It's just, you can just go through and read the ones that resonate. And I just want to make one point to something you said about you said something about the billionaires. And so before I started, my older son said to me, Mom, just make sure you don't always you're not just interviewing the billionaires,
Mm,
because basically that's not what anyone's going to end up being. And that shouldn't be the goal. The goal is not to make $1 billion. The goal is to make a better product or a better service. And the goal is to be doing something that gives you joy. And
mm,
the goal is to have control of your life. And Jonathan Neiman, who started Sweet Green, he said, I love what I do. I work really hard, and I feel like I've never worked a day in my life. And that's
mm.
the goal. The goal is not to make $1 billion. The goal is to find something that gives you joy and to be able to make a career of it. And whether you have, 1,000 employees, 10,000 employees, or 3 employees, if it's giving you joy, then that's the goal.
Yes, absolutely. And then the money will find you. It always does. It's because you're doing what you love and people will find you. It's always the Rumi always says who you seek is seeking you. And so it will find you. But yeah, once you find your purpose and you align with that, that's when all of the pieces come together. The puzzle starts to fit. Well, Margot, thank you so much. I wanted to know if you are still involved with your son's summit. Do you go and speak at that conference that he holds?
So he is not involved in it anymore.
Mm.
I still go. I feel like I'm the luckiest parent in the world. I get to go to my younger son's concerts, and I've been going to summit events. I just went to Summit at Sea in April, where they take over a whole boat. So I've been to, summits in Tulum and
Mm.
uh, just all over. There was one in Detroit a couple years ago, and no, I love going. It's 1,000 of the brightest, most interesting, most fun young people. He's moved on and is doing something else, but of course he still loves the organization and is very thrilled with how they're carrying on.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And I wanted to ask you to tell our audience how best to connect with you.
Um, so I have a website called raisinganentrepreneur.com. I'm on Instagram at Margot Bisnow, and I try to be on LinkedIn. I think that's Margot Machol Bisnow, and on my website there's a way to contact me. Also, there's
Wonderful. We'll have all that information on our pages as well. And because we're here on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question for you, Margot. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
do what you love,
That's perfect.
and it'll be. Or how about do what you love, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Well, thank you again, Margot, for reminding us that cultivating future entrepreneurs isn't about teaching kids to fit in, but giving them the courage to become fully themselves. And once again, for information and to connect with Margot, go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages where you will find all of her social media and direct contact information. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. Look me up at janeapplegath.com and like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Epic Vision Zone. Sending you much love and gratitude. Until next time, stay visionary, stay bold, and live epically.